Hello, hello, and welcome to our last session. We've had lots of great math greatness today. And I just want to introduce myself. I'm Donna Escobedo. I work at Metro North ABE. And for quite a few years, I taught the highest levels, so GED, adult diploma. Um, it was it was leveled. I was in a bigger site, so I was lucky enough to have those higher level students and focus really on them. The past 2 years, though, I have switched over to teaching at Anoka County Jail and Workhouse. And in that setting, I do much more about one-room schoolhouse, and I reach out to all different levels of math. So goal is still usually GED, but their math can be anywhere. So looking at the standards has been a learning process for me, and something that can be a little challenging. So I'm hoping to just give some pointers of things that I've tried that might help you.
Yeah, thanks, Donna. And I'm Genna. I am an adult diploma teacher in the Project for Pride for Living nonprofit based in Minneapolis. I have been here for about 2 years now, teaching primarily math. And before that, I taught special education, in the St. Paul Public Schools.
Right. Well, we are going to just start out with some math to warm us up. So if you have a paper, pencil, pen, anything, we're going to just start out with a warm up and just get us thinking more about math. We've had a lot of thinking today, but this just to get us kind of focused on the standard that we're going to dig into in a little bit here. So this is going to be a number string. So maybe some of you are familiar with those, and they're designed to help students to build up their thinking. So we'll go ahead and try this number string here. And as we go ahead and just chat, put your answers in the chat so we can discuss as we go. All right. All right, here is our first number here. 10 to the third, 10 cubed, which would be equal to what? All right, thousands place value, 1,000. So 10 times 10 is 10. All right. Our second number here, 10 to the second, or 10 squared. What would that give us? Nice, some hundreds coming in, 10 times 10. All right. How about 10 to the first power? All right, it's just 10. And here's one that a lot of our students might not be familiar with. 10 to the 0. What happens there? Okay, I'm seeing a lot ones coming in here. So as we work through those numbers with their exponents, and the exponents decreased as we went, what is something that you noticed? Or what is happening with that string? Maybe think about how did we go from 10 to the third to 10 to the second? Oh, so we had some zeros in there. One less zero each time. So everyone can join, even people that don't think of themselves as math people. Everyone, I think everyone's a math person. They just don't know it yet. Anything about the operation that was going on with that? Powers of decreasing. Good. All right, look at our second part here. So when we did the pattern, we got to the answers. What happened to those zeros? Right, they were decreasing. All right, now we've got a little harder one. So a lot of times maybe students they're often familiar with exponents and the basics of them. Now we've got one with a negative. Yes, I agree. Place value, huge. So 10 to the negative 1. 110. What if we go to 10 to the negative 2? 110, what hundredths? One over 100. And if we go one more, 10 to the negative 3, what is happening with that one? Yeah, subtracting 1 from the exponent, making it more, I like it more negative, it's smaller. So what could we say is happening with these patterns? Like going more negative. Continuing with dividing by 10. Nice. So that repeated addition. So if we went 10 to the negative 4th, we would get even smaller. And then what if we had one that was just a variable? G to the negative 10, what might that look like? And you could, Unmute if you want to say it, if it's too much to type. There we go. It's always hard to type in those exponents. Thank you, Luella. So thinking about what we looked at with the exponents, both the positive, the negative, and the zero, what generations could you make about when we have the negative exponents? Nice. Dividing and multiplying 10, 100,000, moving the decimals back and forth. Yeah, the place value. Good. All right, thank you. I don't know. Oh, they look like reciprocal wholes and parts. Yeah, every time when I just see a negative exponent, I always think, oh, okay, wait, what? I have to stop and think before doing anything with it. But yeah, as we build up with the exponents, I think we're timesing as we go up, but then as we go the other way, we're divided with that repeated division. So this is just a number string activity, just to get students thinking and how one number will link to another and kind of looking at some patterns, which we use in math all of the time. So getting them to recognize that the same thing is happening. Right, thank you. And we'll go on with the rest of our agenda.
Thanks, Donna. That was great. Whenever my students see a variable in any way, shape, or form, they always freeze. So I appreciate that you gave everybody, especially me, some wait time so I could process that last one. So thank you. So today we are going to be exploring and unpacking the CCRS standards, D&E. We won't be going through all of the standards, but we will be sharing some resources to help you later explore more in-depth standards. But we will have some playtime at the end to go through what we share with you.
Thank you, Jenna. All right. We are going to, so I've been working with the standards now since well, they came around about 10 years ago. I think it's 10 years almost already. And at first it was just like, oh my goodness, what is all of this? There's a lot involved. And as a teacher, I'm a GED teacher, so I teach all the subjects. And I started out as an ESL teacher and then transitioned into GED. So I was strong with the language, and then I learned some social studies, some science, and then the math. The math was the one. I've always liked math. I've had jobs that have involved math, but teaching the math was a whole different ball game. So this working with those higher standards and trying to get them through GED, this was a challenge for me. So how do I take these standards that are sometimes hard to understand and make sense of them, so then I am able to teach them in a way that doesn't cause a lot of anxiety for my students, and they can ease into it and, you know, be ready to try things. So today, for the D standard, we're going to look at it's 8EE1, working with integer exponents. And so this is an algebra standard, but this is just the simplified language. If you look in the blue book or any of the CCR standards, the blue book or our list, the whole thing will tell you know and apply the properties of integer exponents to generate equivalent numerical expressions. So that's how the standard reads. So just all of that, not being formally trained as a math teacher, but formally trained as an ABE teacher, how is I going to bring this all together? So first I just started with, okay, let's break down the language a little bit. So this is a D level standard. And so for GED and high set, D, a lot of the questions will be at D level. But sometimes you gotta go a little higher with the E. There's some of that. And then if you're going into adult diploma, they will require some E level as well. So this is an E level that is connected to the D level that I just showed. And this is perform arithmetic operations with polynomials. Once again, in the simplified language. The language from the blue book, though, I have to read it because it's long. Understand that polynomials form a system analogous to the integers, namely they are closed under the operations of addition, subtraction, and multiplication. Add, subtract, and multiply polynomials. So when I hear all that language, I just sometimes I don't know what to do because it's complicated language. So I had to start somewhere. So after looking at different standards, looking at long descriptions like that, I might have been feeling like this, but what is the feeling? So if you want to just put in the chat, when you are looking at a standard and it's a lot of complicated math language, what's the feeling that you have? Egan says panic. Yep. Stress. Can I get this in English, please? Yes. Math sounds like a different language sometimes. I don't have enough time to unpack it. So many skills addressed in one standard. Absolutely. We'll talk about that. How do you break down those skills? So yes, it can be a little scary. So then we come to that question, what do they want you to do? So really, just taking a little piece and starting there, breaking it up, looking at what are your pieces here. So first of all, going to what's going to help us with our standard? How do we know what the standards are, what we need? And depending what you are preparing your students for, they might have different end goals that they need. So not everybody has to go through all the E standards, or maybe not even all the D standards, but what they need to help them be successful. So when I look at the standards, I will look at either my blue book that gives you a lot of information, and that is grouped by level. So the A's, B's, C, D, and E, they'll all be grouped. And that's very helpful, but my favorite way to look at the standards, when I'm trying to start out, is the content progression. And this is grouped by the domain. So it'll take you like all the way through a certain, so understanding number operations or ratio proportion. It'll take you through from the basic level up to your D and your E. So the content progression has been really helpful for me as I look, okay, what comes, I can look at, here's what we're working on. We're working on exponents, what comes before exponents, what comes after, and it's all grouped in that progression. So that is one that's been helpful. And then if you are newer to the standards or newer just to ABE, we have a glossary of terms also. So these are all found on the Atlas website. And that can be very helpful because you start hearing all these all these other words. So you hear the math words and then you hear all these other, what are they talking about in relationship to the standards? So there is a glossary of terms as well. So those are some great things to, when you're just starting out, these are the ones that they're gonna sound kind of, the language is gonna be hard at first. So we're gonna dig into how to handle that. All right, so this is the Making Sense of a Standard worksheet. This is part of with the CCRS and also on the Atlas website. And when you look at the standard and you have confusing language and there's skills they need to know and there's skills they need to still develop, how do you approach this? And if you're coming in at the D level, that there can be a lot that comes before that level. So looking at the standard itself and how are you going to break it down? So we're going to look for meaning. How can it split it up? What does each part mean? Thinking about what are the objectives? So this is, you might have one in teacher language, but thinking about how can you say it in student language also? And how to approach each of those parts and how they relate to each other. So I started out, here's some really hard like words and they're all mathy words. What do they mean? I just started out, I had to go ahead and Google. So that 8-point EE1, the sample standard that I had up there at the beginning, yeah, what does it mean? And even if I know the words, what does it look like? So some examples to see, or sometimes taking somebody to talk through it, which is where my friend Khan Academy comes in. I used Khan Academy a lot at first as I was trying to just, okay, what does this really mean, or what does it look like? And then after kind of learning and working with the D level, I became more comfortable, but still resources, how to teach it and to remember, like, what do they need before and after this piece that I'm teaching them. So some other favorites that I kept coming across when I would Google is Achieve the Core and Illustrative Math. So those were two that I've used quite a bit over the past couple years. Achieve the Core, I am going to show that in just a minute here. That is one that really helped me when I switched from like a mainly GED level class where they're about to test to a multi-level, more of a one-room school house feel. So these are just some of my favorites that I've tried. And here is the Achieve the Core site. And so this is to go with that. So we've got our shifts with our focus and our coherence and our rigor. Coherence is something that when I made that change over to the jail setting, I had to think about a lot more because I found myself having to go back, sometimes more than even just one step. So meeting them where they're at. So this is a tool that I found that is super helpful with coherence. So let's see if I can get this to work. All right, so this is the Achieve the Core site, and it's a map that connects the standards. And so when I ran across this, I was like, wow, this really, it's helpful because then I've got the book, but this kind of like maps it out for me and shows those connections. And also it's if I have to go lower, okay, I can go to this next one and I don't have to do as much searching. So I felt like this was a time saver for me to know like how to build up or go lower with my standards that I'm trying to teach. So the coherence map is, it's got all the grade levels up to the high school. The standard that I am looking at today is at the 8th grade level. So I would just go into the 8th grade. And then we've got all of our different domains here. And oh, we're going to look at the expressions and equations today. So I would click on that. And then this will bring me to our standard. So we've got, there's the standard stated again. And they've got, let's see if it'll, so here's our definition. It's got definition. So for some of that hard language, what is an integer? If you're starting there, that's where you're starting. So helpful. You don't have to dig for it. Here's some language that you're going to need to understand to know what to do with this. Right. And then if you map out the standard, so this is the one I'm working on, but to map it will take me to, so what comes before and then what comes after. So this one will take me, so here's my 6. So I went from a D level with the 8th grade to probably a high C, maybe low D. So I think this is a high C, the 6 EE. So this brings me into that C level. So apply and extend previous understanding of arithmetic to algebra expressions, write and evaluate numerical expressions involving whole number exponents. So using that language, talking about the the exponents. And if they're not ready for that, the other day I was teaching and we were talking about something and I don't know, I was talking for a while and one of the guys all of a sudden raised and, oh, what's an exponent again? So I was like, okay, if I would have clarified that language, I think it's always good to talk a lot. So with the language of it and not just me talking, but getting them to use the language too. So then they are able to say, what is an exponent or what is an integer? So this one takes us all the way down. Now we're back to like level 4, grade level 4, but for ABE, it'd be about a B level. So it takes us lower if we need to go, or we can go back higher. And as we build up, we can build into those, oops, where we go here? There we go. Build into some E level. And so nice, helpful tool, gives you like a map. And then also within this, I just liked it because it had a lot of nice things as far as the map. That was my favorite. And then it gives some tasks. So there's an example task that they'll have with all of them. And they give you solutions, which is good. You don't have to search for it or Google somewhere else. And then also with each of the standards, they've got the progression. So what does that look like for your group? So properties of integer exponents. And they'll give you some additional tasks. And this has been a favorite of mine because that oftentimes they'll take you into that other website that I talked about, the illustrative math, and then give us some things that we can start using right away. Also within here, some assessment items. So like some test type questions. So some samples of those. Prior grade level tasks, so things that, like I showed on the map, that would come before. This is just kind of listing out what those are. And then they have a focus, and that has to do with the focus on that grade level. So it'll give you a like a chart of where that level is focusing and those main things that they're looking at. So this has been a super helpful tool for me. So I wanted to share this with everybody as we look at, going from building up the math skills, and depending what area of math you're working in, your students, they might be high flyers in some areas, and then other areas they just struggle in for whatever reason. But this is without a lot of work. You can like go back down to that lower level, pull up a task, and have some things that you can try out right away. All right. Questions about the tool? Right. So that has been something that has helped me make sense of these standards and kind of all in one place. All right. And we'll have some time to play with that at the end. So stay with me for a little bit longer and then we'll play. All right. So this is just if I were going to work with the standard, I did some homework on it. I did some, maybe some Googling, maybe watching some videos, looking at, where does this fall in the coherence map? So using all of those things to get me ready for my standards. So getting ready for my level D students here. This is the worksheet. So this is just kind of what I think of as I'm planning. So this breaking into the sections here, I always think of the verbs, the action, what are they doing with the math? And the noun is the what are they doing and how are they doing it? So looking at that language of what are they asking? And then then looking at the meaning of it, this is where I try to pull out words or ideas that after you've worked with them a few times, yeah, you get more comfortable. But at first, okay, what is an integer? Like I had worked with integers, but if I had to explain to somebody, what exactly is an integer? I had to go back and think of like each step of what I'm working with. So making meaning, this is where I like to just kind of list out and really think about, that's where I think about bringing in like the vocabulary also. Right, and then writing the objectives, this either in the teacher language or then in the student language. So I can use those rules of integer exponents to create equal expressions. So once I know how exponents work, now I can rewrite a different expression. And then strategies I like to use, I like to do kind of a routine. We'll have some kind of an opener. And I don't call it a math talk, but I call it a math chat. And I don't, sometimes I feel like the math talks, they are, I feel like, oh, that's great. There's all these great resources. And so math chat, math talk, just to get them, what are they looking at? What are we going to be, what are we doing, thinking about this new concept? Learning tasks, that is what we'll look at in just a little bit here. Those from Achieve the Core or the illustrative math, those have been my friends lately. And then practice problems from pretty much like what resource that you like that's going to help build fluency. So to give practice with what you're working on. And then the relationship, that is what comes before this? What skills do we need before we can work on this? And what do we want to prepare students for that next level, what they need for that? And some things that I think about as I'm prepping, these are, I've kind of filled out the chart thinking about, okay, this is things I have to keep in mind. And I've looked at what comes before and after. So thinking about these skills that will help them be successful at this level. And so collecting those. An I can statement. So students are, they're getting exposed to the language here once again. But then they have like, okay, what did we work on? They also, the I can statements at first I thought, oh, I don't know, like rewriting this and, telling them, okay, I can do this. But it does give them the language and they are able to, oh, we did this thing. And when they hear integer again, they hear exponent. Oh yeah, I did work with those. Oh, I used some rules with that. So giving them some language in that I can statement, I think is valuable. And so for my math chat, I use a variety of things that I had listed there, but I have a couple favorite sites that just to get them talking. And I like to use these for either review, find out what they know, where they're starting from, how comfortable they are with the topic. I might have somebody at a very low level and then somebody that is ready to take their GED test. That was my class yesterday. So looking at things that everybody can kind of start to talk about, even if it's not all at the same level, brings the class together, but it also tells me a lot about kind of where they're at. And then it also gives great opportunity to practice our math vocabulary. So this is our, which one doesn't belong and why? So this is one that where'd my chat go? This is one I used the other day and did not get, a lot of times when I use these, I don't know if any of you have used these. Um, it isn't where I think it's going to go. It goes someplace different and that's fine. That's just telling me, okay, this is how they're thinking about this set of numbers, or sometimes it's graphs. But if you had to throw one of these out here, which one could you throw out? All right, where did my chat? My chat disappeared on me.
We've had several people say 32 because it's not a perfect square. Somebody said 81 because it's odd, or 144 because it's a triple digit.
Okay. Nice. And I had all of those, like, going into it, I thought, okay, we've been working with exponents and some square roots. And when I put this up and I thought, oh, maybe some little review. And yeah, I got something totally different, but it was, they threw out, what did they throw out first? 81. And I was like, well, why 81? And it had, they were thinking of 16s. I was like, oh, okay, not what I thought about. But my lower level student had been thinking about like doubling and having numbers. So he went right to like, what's that pattern? And then my higher level students, yeah, what's a perfect square? And so, yeah, 64, 144, 81 would be some perfect squares. And the idea with this, just to get them talking. So there's not a right or wrong answer. And then I usually ask them, if you were going to throw one out, okay, put that one back in and then find a reason to throw a different one out. So just challenging them and just getting them very low anxiety activity. We're just talking about it. And sometimes people just, I don't like the number, 144, so I threw it out. Sometimes it is just that. So an opener to get them chatting about the math. Right. Here's another site that I like to use, same but different. What's the same? What's different? So thinking about the numbers and the exponent, x to the second is the same as 2 to the x. What's the same? What's different? And then I might go one that maybe is a little harder. So we do maybe one, maybe two of these for an opener at a time. But this one, same or different. And then I would probably ask them, why? Why do they think that? Okay. And for this, the ones that are a little harder or we have more trouble with, I will add some patterning for understanding for ones that are maybe newer. So we talk about it first, like, what do you see? Do you think it's the same? Do you think it's different? And as questions come up, looking at, oh, what is happening here? So patterns to go along with those as needed. So looking at patterns with some same base, just the variables, same base with numbers, same base, but then we're bringing in some negative exponents. Or maybe what does it look like as a more of a drawn out like a geometry problem? You might get something like this. And then we've got another, the top right one with that distribution. So what happens there? So looking for the patterns, so getting them talking, and then for the concepts that are newer or maybe a little harder, let's look at some patterns. This is similar to the number string that we did earlier. And here is that pattern that we were thinking about with our number string. So like we had talked about, we're thinking if we're going higher, we're multiplying, but as we go down, we're dividing. Right. So starting out with some, just getting them talking. And so that is how I like to start the class. And I shared a couple of those, the sites that I like to use, but if any of you have other great like openers that you like to use just to get your students talking at a very low stress, in a low stress way, go ahead, throw those in the chat because we would all love to hear if you've got other great sites. Right. And then as I move through, so we were kind of talking, introducing where we're at with a skill. Then I like to go into the tasks, and these are the tasks that that are from that coherence map. It'll just take you right out there, and some are right on their site, and then the other ones that illustrated math, they'll take you to those ones as well. And so the first couple tasks here are more of a C level. So because I never know exactly where my students will be starting. So I always try to have some that are more less intimidating at first as till we build up that skill. So I did a couple of lower ones here, some exponent experimentation where they are going to make some equivalent expressions like they are asked to do in the standard. And then working with some exponents with the Genie, and then extending the definition of exponents. This is the one that is going to take us to this level of the standard, extending the definitions. And this site, we don't have time to work through these, but as we look at it, they'll give you the task. And this is a great one for working with exponents and negative exponents. I was super excited when I found it. But you can do just a student view, so they're just seeing the problem. But for teachers, to help us out, it's got the task, but then it's got great like how they explain what's going on, what's the solution, what's different ways that students might get to the solution. So they'll present oftentimes. This one does not have the multiple solution, but they'll oftentimes have multiple solutions, so different approaches. So kind of like Sarah was talking about, there, different ways to get to our answers. So this has been this has been a great resource or a couple resources that I found that has helped me so much with that coherence. So as I dig into those D and E standards, um, looking at, what do they want? How can we start working with them in a low stress way? And then building it up and working with some tasks. And the tasks, the reason I like those so much is also you get to see a lot of what are the students thinking, because there's not like one way, here's a worksheet, solve this problem. They can do it and approach it in their way, and you get to see a lot of the student thinking. Right. Any questions about those tasks? Right. And then after we've worked with the skill for a while, an exit ticket or maybe review for the next day. I might do something with Open Middle. This is another great resource. Has all the different levels in it, and you can search for what is it that you're working on. And these are also wonderful because there's not just one answer. There is many answers, and they can really play around with it and show you what they're thinking. Right. And then after we've worked with our standards, learned them, dug into them a little bit, everyone is different. Some people will need a lot more practice. Some will need maybe a little more practice. Maybe some just needed a reminder. They've had lots of math in the past. They just need to refresh. So wherever they're at, you gotta make sure that at for their own, where they're at in their own learning, giving them some opportunity to build up their fluency. So whether it's Khan Academy or another online learning, or Kaplan Big Book is real popular with the GED crowd. Those types of resources, math drills, CUDAs, free worksheets, just to get more practice going. And the last resource on here, the Light and Salt Learning, that is designed, focused on GED also, and they've got some great resources and practice there too. So once we've worked together as a group, then this is usually where if they need more practice, using one of these resources. And any great resources that you have that you like to use to build fluency, you can chat those too, because we want to hear about that. Right. And Genna is going to take us to the next level of this with level E.
Thank you. So teaching the adult diploma, in order for our students to earn the equivalency for the math class, students have to show mastery in level D and a level E standard. So it's taking that level D to that next step, but the same planning process still applies. Go ahead and click next. Thank you. So just like Donna did, I use the Achieve the Core website, and I go right to that level E standard. And then I kind of do a backward mapping process from that. So I would go to Achieve the Core, click on the level E standard, but then I would really spend a lot of time backward mapping to D, C, B, A, just to make sure that all of the gaps are filled for my students, to make sure that they're really learning the D standard and are able and ready to take it to that level E. Next, some of the level E standards can be quite difficult if there are gaps in student learning. So using the Achieve the Core website has been great to try to mitigate some of those gaps. Yeah, so again, just with the standards mapping, it's great to see where you are, what's ahead, and how the students get to the standard. So Donna showed us this earlier. This is what it looks like, just kind of in full screen. So even at a level E standard, students can still progress from there and move forward. But again, it's great to move backward as well to see where the students have been and where they're going. And Donna is on the move.
My computer's going out. What is
Oh
going
no.
on? There we go.
Perfect, thank you. So just like Donna did, I also use the making sense of the standard worksheet. So I always go through, and with the polynomials, you have to add, subtract, and multiply. That's a lot to do in one lesson. So with my students, I've broken it down into 2, sometimes 3 separate lessons to really understand that level E standard and to go from adding and subtracting multiples to multiplying polynomials. That can be really difficult for students because they have to lean on that prior knowledge to be able to do those skills that that level E standard requires. So one resource that I use quite a bit with my students is the Atlas final task options. So on the Atlas website, there are final task options for all 4 math courses. So number sense, algebra, geometry, and data and statistics. So Donna, if you could go ahead and click that link, please. So this one is specifically for the algebra task because Donna and I were both focusing on the D and E levels for that. It's great because just right on top of the website, they've got the instructions for teachers, the instructions for students. But if you click into that Google folder, it gives you more information. So again, the instructions for the teachers and the students are in there, but there's also a capstone task that you could use. The capstone task answer key is in there. And then there's also the portfolio cover sheet. So if you're submitting anything on SID, having that portfolio cover sheet right there and ready to go helps to speed up that process to make sure you've got kind of all of your ducks in a row for that one. So Donna, will you go ahead and go back to the slideshow? Yep. And then we're going to look at the algebra final task just briefly. And so as you can see, it starts off with those level D standards. So students can show what they know and they can show mastery in those level D standards. These are great questions to base lessons and practice on. As you can see, a lot of them are real world examples. So I use a lot of these types of problems in my lesson planning to expose students to what some of these questions may look like on a test. And I'm excited to implement some of the resources and information from Sarah's session earlier today about test talks. I think some of these questions could be really great for those. And then if you scroll through, you can see that the questions are starting to get into those level E standards. So I think you can go all the way. The algebra course has a lot. So they are divided into level E, so you can see exactly which standard you're trying to hit. And this is great. I use this assessment a lot for my students to show mastery in that level E standard. And this is what I actually submit to the state for their final approval. But again, even if you're not submitting anything in the adult diploma or in the program that you're working in, these questions are really great to expose students to that level E standard, or if you're working within that level E, really looking at, does my student understand this material? Do I need to go back and do some more backward mapping for that? All right. So we have gone through quite a few resources. And as a teacher, I always love having time to actually look at the resources that presenters are sharing with me. So now we're going to do a little 7 degrees of standard separation. If anybody's kind of familiar with that 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon separation, everything leads back to Kevin Bacon. Everything leads back to the standards here. So what we're going to do is we're going to have you look at geometry just to change things up a little bit. We've picked 3 level B standard options for you to start at. And then we are including some tools for you to use. So we want you to use the Achieve the Core website, the CCRS content progressions, and the Atlas Geometry Final Task. So you can start wherever you would like on this. But the idea is to just give you time to explore. Like if you're starting at a level B and you're trying to get to that level E, what does some of that content progression look like? And like Donna and I said earlier, we both really enjoy the CCRS content progression sheet because of how it's broken down. But you can also use the Blue Book for this. So what we're going to do is we are going to break you up into breakout rooms. So you have a chance to work with some other participants in this session. And you can all choose to work on the same standard. You can choose to work on different standards, but play around with the tools and just think about what you notice. What might be some sticking points? What might be some things that you are really liking about these resources, or what you can maybe even take back to your classrooms? So I think looking at time, let's do 18 minutes with a 2-minute timer. That'll give about 20 minutes total. Again, you can do different standards in your breakout room, or you can choose to all look at the same one.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll be in breakout rooms for a total of 20 minutes. At the 18-minute mark, everyone will get a 2-minute warning that you should wrap up your conversations in the next 2 minutes. So don't feel like you have to come back to the actual room at that 18-minute mark. It just gives you a little time to wrap up. So I will go ahead and open all the rooms.
Will the slide be projected into the rooms?
No, unless we do that manually.
Can do that from here, Jenna, if you want.
That would be great. I'm sorry, I didn't think about that ahead of time. But the participants might like to see the actual standards to start from.
Yeah, Donna, do you know how to do that? Because we're seeing Donna's screen, right?
Yeah.
Or I can talk you through it, Jenna.
Yeah, if you can talk me through it, I can try it.
Sure. So you'll, unless Christine knows a better way, I usually stop sharing and then share again, and then that share into breakout rooms shows up.
So stop sharing.
Yeah, but then you'll just share again. But this time, when you open it up and choose it over on the far right, there's like share sound, optimize for video clip, and then share to breakouts.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I hope you all had some good discussion or just some time to independently review the sources and the website for this activity. Patsy, go ahead and click next. Are there any questions that have come up as you've been exploring things you're noodling, things you're excited about? Any final thoughts you'd like to share? You can unmute or put them in the chat too.
How did the mapping go? That's my question to the group.
I know when I was popping into the groups, there's a lot of good discussion about the website itself. There are some little buggy things, like Mary said, liked the mapping, but would like to take some time to figure out how to navigate it better. There's a lot to navigate on the Achieve the Core website. It's definitely one that you have to click all of the buttons, figure out how to backtrack. But it's a great resource to use in conjunction with some other tools as well. I agree, Megan. Lots of great info today, some tired brains. Some mistakes, mistakes to see where I needed to go in the end. Yeah, trial and error, exactly.
And mistakes are good. We
Mhm.
learn from them. So.
Yep. And you might discover something that we don't even know about on some of these websites too, or tools. So if you learned anything, feel free to pop that into the chat. Patsy, go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so next steps. If you haven't already, Atlas has a fantastic announcement document that is a living document. It's updated frequently with upcoming professional development opportunities, trainings. If you were in the welcome session this morning, there's links to like the statewide mentorship program, teaching numeracy to adults. So feel free to play around in that document. Like I said, it's updated quite frequently. So it is a living document. You could bookmark it if you would like, so you have access to it all the time. A couple big things to put on your radar coming up. January 23rd and 24th. It'll be the in-person Language and Literacy Institute. Atlas will be holding the CCRS Foundations course there. So if you haven't done that yet, I highly recommend it, especially if you've maybe been exposed to the CCRS standards or maybe just dipped your toe into the Blue Book or the content progressions. That's a great opportunity to dive in a little bit deeper. Patsy's asking who is presenting. I am one of the presenters. So I will be presenting with my colleague Amber Deleger, and we will be going through the CCRS Math Foundations live and in person at Language and Literacy. And then coming up in April, which, you know, again, seems a long ways away, but will come up quickly. There's the MCTM conference in Duluth, the Minnesota Council for Teachers of Mathematics. It's for K-12 and ABE instructors. Highly encourage you to attend. You can attend any session you want. Does not have to be an ABE session. Or if you're interested in presenting, they're also looking for presenters for MCTM. So if that is of interest to you, feel free to drop that in the chat and I can get you more information. All right, any closing comments, remarks, or questions?
Thank you all so much for coming to the last session of the day. We did a lot of great math thinking today. So thank you all.
Yeah, and thanks for staying and playing with the resources. We appreciate that.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
And just because we're both here, I'm just going to thank Genna for all her work today, making Math Institute come to be.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate it. And thank you to all of you who are behind the scenes or in front of the camera today. I really appreciate your work. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Enjoy your weekend.